Yeah. Thank you. All right, I think let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with ApprovalMax and BDO New Zealand. We are very, very, very excited to be jointly hosting this webinar with the team at BDO, and we'll very shortly introduce our guest speakers as well. Look, today we'll be focusing on best practices for managing accounts payable for not-for-profits and how BDO does it, what solution BDO offers, and how they do it in collaboration with some of the best apps in the ecosystem of the cloud accounting. Just a bit of housekeeping, though. This webinar is recorded. I believe everyone will have received a notification that it is being recorded, and a recording will also be sent. That was a bit strange. Are we back on? Can someone please tell me in the chat? Perfect. Thank you very much.
You need to share your screen again.
Okay, perfect. I'm doing that right away. What was the last thing we heard, Carl? Can you sort of tell me here?
I'd say start again, pretty much.
Perfect. Let's do it. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so what I was saying is good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining in today. We are very excited to be hosting this webinar in conjunction with BDO, the team at BDO in New Zealand. So what our focus is today is on best practices for managing accounts payable for the not-for-profit organizations and how BDO does it, what solutions they provide, and how they do it in conjunction with some of the other apps out in the cloud accounting ecosystem. But just as a bit of a housekeeping, this webinar is being recorded, and we aim to finish in about 45 minutes. So we will leave about 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A at the end, but would love to get some interaction going. So there are two ways to have a chat with us. There is a Q&A box in Zoom. I'll be very surprised if there is anyone who has not used Zoom in the last 24 months. So there's a Q&A section where you can post your questions, and we will endeavor to answer those as part of this session. If we cannot get to those questions, we will get back to you as part of our follow-ups as well. There is also a chat box in Zoom. Would love to get some interactions going, guys. Please do tell us where you are joining us from. I'm in Auckland. We've got the team at BDO. We've got Daniel in Auckland, Daniel in Wellington, right? And we've got Carl in Auckland.
Yep, absolutely. No, proud
awesome.
Lower North Island person.
Thanks, Daniel. We've got someone from Maryland, US, Perth, Sydney. Well, it must be really early in Perth. Well, it's 7 a.m. I think in Perth. Sydney, Christchurch, Auckland, Brisbane, Toronto. This is truly global. We've got our team joining from Russia. Paul, Auckland. I know you're in Auckland, Paul. Nice to catch up. Thanks for joining in. Ladies Pass in Victoria, another one from Perth. Yeah, it is early. But regardless, thank you very much for joining in, guys, and for tuning in. There's lots of really interesting nuggets to unpack today, and we'll be hearing from our speakers very shortly. So with that, actually, let's get straight into it. We've got Daniel and Carl who are joining in. Daniel, would you like to unmute yourself and give us a little introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Sahil. I'm Daniel. I'm a senior accountant in the business advisory and tax team down here at BDO in Wellington. I work on a wide variety of clients, from mum and dads with little investment portfolios or the odd rental property to some large global multinationals and SOEs, and of course quite a few not-for-profits and schools. So I've had a wide variety of exposure to a whole lot of different things, seen what works in different entities and what doesn't, and some of the challenges that they face.
Awesome.
also
Thank you,
used to work
Daniel.
at school before I was at BDO, so that's given me some interesting insights to the not-for-profit space.
Oh, cool. Was it a school in Wellington?
School in the Wairarapa, so there was a school of about 1,000 students and 100 staff, so it was a fairly decent-sized place.
Very proud to welcome you today. Thanks, Daniel. And with that, Carl, would you like to unmute yourself and give us a short intro?
Hey everyone, I'm Carl Ferner. I'm associate from BDO in Auckland. So we've got the Upper and Lower North Island covered. I also work in a business advisory accounting team as well as running an IT consulting team here in Auckland. So on the IT consulting, we specialize in helping the clients find the right IT solutions for their businesses. We work for a lot of not-for-profits and a range of normal corporate entities as well. And there's a range. We work with very small ones all the way up to quite large ones and everything in between. So it's always interesting to see what people need, what the pain points are, and how we can provide a good solution for them. So good to chat to everyone about a little bit about some of the stuff we do here today.
Thank you, Carl. Excited for you to be joining us today as well and sharing your expertise with us. So let's kick straight into it now. I don't think I need to introduce myself. I'm the partner account manager here at ApprovalMax and your host for today. So with that, let's get straight into it. As part of the agenda today, what we want to unpack a little bit is around common challenges that we, after having spoken to hundreds and thousands of not-for-profit organizations, we want to sort of unpack some of those common challenges and themes we hear of. And then we want to talk about, not just challenges, but actually how we resolve those challenges, how cloud accounting and the surrounding ecosystem of apps helps in providing solutions for such challenges. We'd like to unpack those with examples and stories of what Carl and Daniel in their experience have seen. So we'll talk about a couple of case studies where the right apps and ecosystem in the cloud accounting space has helped. And after that, we'll do a very short high-level demo of how ApprovalMax actually works in this space and contributes to solving some of those challenges. And we will end with a special offer for not-for-profits as well. So we've got a special offer from our end, and you're more than welcome to get in touch with Carl and Daniel as well if you've got any questions throughout the webinar and even after. So with that, let's actually delve a little bit deeper into some of the challenges. Now, as I said, after having spoken to so many of our clients, we see general themes around strict budget management and all these that are displayed on the screen. And at this point, we'd also like to put up a poll. We want to hear from you, your perspective, what challenges you see in your organization that are challenges and you'd like to hear more about. So we've got a poll up. It's put it up for about 30 seconds. Some of the options that we talk about are strict budget management, no clear audit trails, complex authorization policies, difficulties and delays in obtaining authorization due to manual processes, or lack of real-time data due to using paper. So these are, in general, this is what we hear of, but keen to hear if we've got people participating in the poll. I can see some numbers coming through. We'll give it another 10 or 15 seconds. I can still see some responses coming through. At this point, difficulties and delays in obtaining authorization due to manual processes is at the top with 64%. It's very interesting, and there are some of the other ones are actually quite balanced. So we've got no clear audit trails, complex authorization policies are sitting at about 40%, 36%, 40%. For another 5 seconds and we'll end the poll and display some of these results. Looks like everyone's answered, so we'll just end the poll now. Okay, let's see. Cool. Okay, so we have ended with 68%. Difficulties and delays in obtaining authorization due to manual processes. 40% no clear audit trails. That's really interesting one. I've got lots to say in that sort of in that category. 36% complex authorization policies. We've got strict budget management at 28%, and lack of real-time data due to using paper, 20%. it's great to see. Paper sitting right at the bottom. I think in most organizations, we are adopting technology quite fast. So it's really good to see that paper is dropping. But it's also interesting to see that there are certain challenges we experience together. Keen to hear from you, Carl. What do you see as challenges that you face or you have seen in the not-for-profit organizations specifically that you can talk us through?
Yeah, thanks, Eel. I mean, I'm not surprised at all the delays in authorization. That's definitely one that comes through a lot, is that people talk about having to chase physically paper around an office, go and find that person. Oh, it's on my desk. Oh, I've lost the paper. Can you reprint it? I need to sign it off again. We're trying to pay today. So that's pretty common and a reason to get it done, especially if it's manual. And now on the work from home, the last 2 years has been pretty, if you were reliant on paper moving around, that got very difficult. From what I've seen, interesting that the strict budget management is on the slightly lower one. It's possible that I've found everyone's got it, but maybe they don't find it a challenge. Maybe that's something they've got to sort of feel it's well managed, because all the ones that I've come across, generally there is a lot of budgets, even very to much smaller detail than a corporate might have, where one person's got a $2,000 budget for the year to do their one small thing, as opposed to a whole, having necessary budget for a whole department. So there's many budget holders. Those are probably two that I've seen a lot. And then definitely the complex authorizations, simply because things often need 2, 3, 4 authorizations, or the budget manager should be authorizing it.
Awesome, thank you, Carl. And Daniel, what has your experience been in the same space? What challenges have you seen in especially the not-for-profit organizations? You mentioned you've worked at a school as well. So
yes, absolutely. A lot of similarities to what Carl was saying, and I think the complex authorization policies ties in really closely to the delays and difficulties among getting things authorized. I remember in my own experience on the other side of it, where I had to sign off invoices that might get put in my pigeonhole after I've cleared it among 100 other pieces of paper in there, and things just get lost. And that means I haven't been able to sign something off, and then I haven't been able to get the second or third signature on that, and then I'm getting chased by the accounts team. We're trying to set this batch payment up this afternoon. Can you get onto this now? And I've seen that in a lot of our clients. It was interesting over the lockdown last year for us in Wellington. We had a lot of clients that had exactly the same sort of processes in place with passing paper around, and then a bit of a panic of, what do we do? Are we allowed to do any of this electronically? Are the auditors going to approve of it? Are they going to say something's gone wrong? Do we have to start trying to courier documents to each other for signatures? And we thought, well, there's definitely a better way, and we can help you guys improve your processes, not only for the lockdown, but going forward, to be able to get a lot of more efficiencies and other improvements as a side effect.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And just to add to that as well, I mean, obviously not taking into account the last just 18 months or just lockdown, but even prior to that, a lot of people have been traveling a fair bit, and some of them are actually budget holders. So getting them to sign off on an invoice when they're actually on a flight for the next 12 hours, it becomes impossible. So that's where the delays come in, and you've got suppliers potentially chasing for payments, and eventually if you end up making payments, well, actually that's not authorized yet.
Yeah, well, we did run into that situation where one of our clients had to say, sorry, we can't pay this for a month because that manager who's in charge of authorizing that is overseas. So what are we going to do about that? So this is a really great opportunity for them.
Interesting, very interesting. So keen to hear how you guys at BDO in different regions, and I know not-for-profit is actually quite a big space as well. It's not just one type of charity or one type of church. There's actually there's schools, there's different types of organizations that fall in that category. There's some smaller ones, some larger ones. How do you at BDO help with unpacking some of these challenges? I suppose some organizations actually don't even know that they are challenges until they are made aware of in terms of comparison. So what's your process around figuring out and understanding these problems?
I'll start on that. So, I mean, for me, being in the IT consulting space, it often comes to me when the not-for-profit has identified, maybe with their BDO advisor or maybe internally, that there are issues or inefficiencies or they need to do improvements. but they might not know, they don't know how, they don't know what is the right, what should they be doing. So that's when they might come to us and say, right, can you come in and, we'll show you how we do it. We show you our manual processes, talk about how many approvers, and then we can help them come up with that right solution to make improvements. Sometimes it might be simply add in one little app that makes it all the difference, or it's change the whole suite and the whole ecosystem. Moving to the cloud might be that, or just adding on to what they've got. So that's where we're really helping them. We're able to then implement and if they need to work out what their approval processes are, that's where we can help them design that, document it, and get it all going.
And Daniel, from your perspective, how do you look at solving some of these issues?
Yeah, I agree with what Carl says. And, we don't have an IT consulting team permanently in the Wellington office, but we do work in with Carl's team when we do have those occasions arise. So in our advisory teams, we often have clients come to us with a certain problem, and I try to look at the problem, sort of take a step back where I can and think, what's the end result that we're trying to get? What is our client trying to achieve? What do you want? What's frustrating you? Where are you having these challenges? And how can we find a way to reduce these or make them go away completely? And a lot of the errors and things that they're having is around data entry. I've got 100 invoices. It takes me a day to go through these, and then I've got to go and work out who I'm going to pigeonhole these to or email them to get signed off. It's just a lot of admin work, and that's one of the things that comes up a lot. So we're able to take it from that, where do you want to go? What is your end goal in mind perspective? And that works really well.
Interesting. I was actually just I came across this post on LinkedIn where one of the accounting firms had actually they took on a client that was managing all their finances on an Excel file, had a beautiful formula and everything was working perfectly. But then they said, look, if one formula breaks, you've got a whole Excel file of numbers that don't make sense. And they moved them onto a cloud software, but the client still did not have the confidence for the next 6 months. They actually had both systems working together, the Excel file and also the cloud software. Eventually, obviously, cloud software won, and they ended up ditching the Excel file, and now they've streamlined a lot of their processes internally. So I think it's also a matter of figuring out or highlighting to the client that actually this is a challenge. There are better ways than what you think is currently working. It may be working, but there are better ways of doing the same thing.
I think that's a really interesting point. A lot of clients will try to find, they've got a manual system and process that they like, and they will try to replicate that in a software package that they're trying to move to, and they'll find, oh, it doesn't do this the way that we're expecting it to. I don't want to use it. It's not what we want. And actually taking a step back and thinking, well, actually, the way that you're doing things could be done so much better and more efficiently for you. So perhaps we should look at a bigger process change.
It's a bit like trying to download movies from Netflix, right? To replicate it. Cool. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, guys. So, what are your thoughts on how does moving to the cloud or using a cloud software actually help with tackling some of the challenges which we have seen, which we have had our audience talk about as well? How does the move to cloud or looking at a cloud software help with tackling those challenges?
Yeah, I think moving to the cloud, many might have already done. If they haven't, and we've done some recently where they were not in the cloud, and simply moving to the cloud already tackled a number of issues. Working remotely, for example, or collaborating more, being able to log into the system. So it really comes down to what, like Daniel said, what are they trying to achieve? What is the end goal? And then how can we put the right apps and ecosystem around it to really achieve that goal? So I mean, cloud is obvious, and whatever apps, approvals can be automated, reporting can be automated, accounts payable, which we're talking about today, data entry. That's often one that people don't know can be automated, and it's a bit of a light bulb moment when we tell them, you can be entering, hundreds of bills, and you've got a full-time just data entry, and a lot of mistakes get made and typos get made. And actually these days apps can do that for you, and they can, maybe they don't do it 100%, maybe they do it 90%, but that's a 90% reduction in the time taken to get that data in, and it just already, if that first step is so much more efficient, the rest will flow faster. When the challenge of slowness to get things approved, if it takes so much time to just get into the system and start the process, you're already behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree with all of those points. I think just data is becoming such a big thing these days, and being able to streamline and automate some of those processes to free up time to focus on the bigger picture, on doing things in a better way is definitely the thing of the future. Daniel, keen to hear your thoughts on how the cloud movement, or what experience you have seen in terms of the movement to cloud especially within the not-for-profit organizations.
Yeah, well, the advisory side of it is really useful in terms of cloud technology and being able to get real-time information. For example, our clients that are using Xero with bank feeds set up, we're able to see their bank balance every day. We can look and see how they're tracking. We can check their payables, their receivables, how they're tracking, how their cash flows on a real-time basis. It gives them an immediate, up-to-date source of information, as opposed to waiting for the month end when the accounts team publish them. There's their 3 sets of reports. They can get that information now, so they can make more timely and more informed decisions, which they just previously were not able to. Again, that ability to work from anywhere, whether it is your laptop in the office, or whether it's from home, or whether it's straight on your cell phone, whether it's reviewing information or approving things straight from your phone, as opposed to having to be chained to that desk. And it lets a lot of our not-for-profits focus on what they actually want to do, as opposed to the admin work, which is a bit of a side effect. We've got a lot of virtual CFO offerings where we outsource a lot of clients have outsourced a lot of their accounting functions to us in our office, and if it wasn't for the cloud technology, it just wouldn't be possible. So it lets our clients have a lot more timely advice from us as well.
I love that. I have been working in SaaS industry or software companies for pretty much all my career. And over the last 4 months since we've been in lockdown in Auckland, I sometimes would get sick of sitting at my desk. So I would actually take my laptop, sit in the car outside a beach with my coffee, and I've been working from the car. It makes such a difference. All you need is an internet connection and a laptop. You can actually pretty much work from anywhere. Sometimes not even the laptop. A lot of people work from their phone. So certainly I definitely agree with all the points you've made there, Daniel, in terms of how easy it becomes for you to be able to work from anywhere. When work from home is probably a thing of the past now, it's changed to work from anywhere. So we touched on the apps, right? So we are obviously talking about cloud software, the ecosystem surrounding cloud software. And in New Zealand, Australia, we've definitely seen Xero come about as a bit of a winner in that space. And they've pretty much opened up a whole ecosystem of apps that integrates with, or expert apps that integrates within the ecosystem. So I know there are certain apps that BDO utilizes internally for clients and suggests to clients. Can you talk us through a process of evaluating how you figure out what those apps would be and how you use them as part of a solution, and just how those apps are providing value to clients in different ways. Daniel, should we kick off with you this time?
Yeah, sure thing. So for me, it's looking about what is the client's requirements, what's their end goal they've got in mind. So often we'll start, the complete process from start from finish of an invoice coming in and reviewing that information. So we'll look at something and think, okay, we want some data entry software that can do OCR, optical character recognition, get this information off our source documents into Xero, whether that is from invoices that we've received and we've scanned, or whether we get our invoices via email. So that's where we'll look at something like Dex or HubDoc, depending on this client's situation. Sometimes one system works better than another depending on their requirements. Both have their advantages and disadvantages depending on what you're after. One of the things I like with HubDoc is the ability to fetch invoices directly from suppliers, and Dex can do that too now. And then we'll look at, okay, we've got an audit procedure in place. We need to make sure these are being authorized. We've got a complex approval workflow. It's not just one person approves everything. So in that case, we'll look to ApprovalMax, which we're going to look into more information and have a bit of a demo later. Xero, obviously, it's almost a no-brainer for most of our clients. We'll be putting them onto Xero if they're not already there. and then we'll look at what do they want to get out of it. And that's where a solution like Spotlight reporting or Futurely is really useful, particularly for not-for-profits where they will be presenting reports to a board who may not be as financially literate as we are with looking at a P&L and a balance sheet, which can give them some really nice, easy to understand graphs and diagrams and tell the story about what's happened during that period that they're looking at.
Really interesting. Yeah, and I like the fact that how it all ties together. So it's not just one app working in isolation. It's actually all of these working together to form a solution. Carl, what are you keen to hear your thoughts on the same, on the app stack that you think is perfect for not-for-profits?
Yeah, so I mean, echoing a little bit of what Daniel said, is that there probably isn't one app stack that is the perfect one, and that's probably, I think, what people do need to understand is that, I mean, is that depends really on what you're trying to achieve. Often we'll look at sort of the outcome, which is the reporting, the Spotlight, and the Futurely. In this example, that will drive what do we need how do we need the accounting system to work, and here in this example it's Xero, but how do we set that up, and then through flows back to how does the data entry get in. And that is where that initial discussion is important and working it out. I have seen people that just they just Google it and oh yeah, we'll try one, and they set it up and it doesn't work, and they think, oh, this is no good, or the whole ecosystem is not going to work. And it's actually a case of, well, you put in HubDoc, but Dext has the feature you're after, or vice versa, and then that's where speaking to an advisor to get it right first time can really save time and make sure a good outcome. I mean, and sort of talking through, I mean, this example we got on the screen is quite a common one. It's got a couple of options, but Dext, for those that don't know, Dext and HubDoc, they're two different options with regard to automation of your data entry. So accounts payable, save that time if you're entering lots of data or making mistakes, go straight in from the email or the PDF, steps through into, in this case, ApprovalMax to ensure that complex approval process is followed. It gets into Xero, so we've gone paperless now straight into Xero. Obviously Xero does our accounting and everything around that, and then we've got paperless reporting to come out the other side. Futurely and Spotlight, again, both similar, but have their pros and cons, have their strengths and weaknesses. So it really depends on what we want to get out of each of them, and then we'll put in the right one. And in this case, we've got a full cloud paperless process that's very efficient with very few gaps or chances of error or chances of lost paper along the way.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts there, Carl. And we've actually got a question on this as well. Can you elaborate on the differences between Dext and HubDoc? Given HubDoc is free, why and when would you go with Dext? And I suppose it's quite a loaded question, because the software or the software world is essentially changing every week, if not every month. So you've got new features coming in into the software, the new integration opportunities. So I suppose it does depend on what business you're working with, what their requirements are, how deeper they want to go into each of the invoices. So although their HubDoc is provided with, it's available with a Xero subscription. Dext is separate, but there are pros and cons depending on what you're after. And I think the best is both of those software provide free trials as well. So it's best to just go in and set up a trial and see which one works best for any of your clients. Any further thoughts on this from either of you? The difference between
me and a lot of our clients that I've been using, we've gone down the Dext path, is they're wanting a way of being able to produce a report for a specific month. So whether it's a batch payment they're preparing, they can create an expense report in Dext, and HubDoc doesn't have the same functionality, and they like to be able to bundle together their 20 invoices or their 37 contractors that I've got to pay on Monday when they're sending that through for someone else to approve. So it's really simple, as opposed to HubDoc's sort of different folders that you can tag things through. Potentially the tags could be changed after it went through, which is why some clients will prefer Dext, whereas other clients like HubDoc because it's a lot simpler, sort of more of a set and forget situation compared to the Dext solution. It really depends on the situation. It's definitely not, there's no hard and fast rule. A lot of it depends on how people are comfortable in working and what sort of procedures they have internally and wish to follow.
Yeah, no, just to add to that, I mean, totally agree. There's no hard and fast rule. They both have strengths. In the end, it's a case of HubDoc is free. Dext does have a cost. However, if there is something in Dext that is going to significantly save you time over HubDoc, that wipes out the cost factor immediately. If HubDoc can do everything you need because your requirements mean it fit, there's that free version. So it's very much a conversation or a comparison, and depends on the business and what they need.
Brilliant. No, thanks for sharing your thoughts, guys. So, look, obviously, both of those systems, HubDoc and Dext, are OCR systems. They do that very, very well. They pull the information out of a PDF document. That's the first step in streamlining and automating your processes and putting paper away and taking it on the cloud. So I'd like to talk a little bit about ApprovalMax and where it fits into the equation. So we are essentially a bridge between the OCR systems, which we've talked about, Dext or HubDoc, and Xero, because both of those systems send information or invoices directly into Xero. Essentially what we do, we're an integrated app in the ecosystem that provides a solution when there is a requirement for multi-tiered approval workflows. And in most not-for-profits, I believe there is a requirement, it's a compliance statutory requirement for more than one person to sign off on an invoice before it gets paid. With the workflows that are available in ApprovalMax, they're fully customizable. It is very possible to achieve that. There are different forms of notifications as well that get sent out to the decision makers. It helps them with cutting off the noise, as the alerts are only sent to those people who need to authorize an invoice or a purchase order, not to anyone else. So if you're getting 200 invoices a month, well, you won't be approving everything. It gets scattered depending on the workflow settings you have created within the workflows. The workflows are actually available for purchase orders, for bills, sales invoices, and also contact or vendor creation. And there is the ability to match purchase orders with bills before you approve them to see if there are any variances in the price of products or services you ordered versus what you've been charged for. The solution overall provides a real-time view where an invoice is stuck in the chain and digitizes the challenge of paper-based invoice approvals, which we have talked about today. In fact, what we see is that 25% of the invoices that go through the ApprovalMax system, they get authorized within the first 2 hours. And I suppose the main reason for that is that we spend 4 to 6 hours on our phone almost every day. So if you see a push notification pop up on your phone, you kind of have to act on it straight away. It's just typical human psychology. You just want to act on it straight away. And that's where we see 25% invoices getting approved within the first 2 hours and 50% of them getting approved in the first 24 hours. So when you look at Xero, which is your source of truth for all financial information, you'll actually see all real-time data, and all the invoices will be there, and nothing will actually get delayed in terms of how it appears. So what we'd like to do now is actually talk about a couple of cases where BDO team has actually implemented the app stack and recognized some of the values and some of the solutions that have come out of it, some of the results that we'd like to talk about. So Carl, over to you. Love to hear from you a little bit about this story and this case study about the not-for-profit organization you've worked with.
Yeah, so this is one we did recently. I think that we implemented actually 2020 now, and it was a not-for-profit that was very manual, hadn't actually put their accounting to the cloud. Paper was literally printed, stamped with the stamp, coded, then gone, and someone carries it around, puts it on the right person's desk, waits for it to come back, probably have to go and do their rounds of the office to check, chase people along, get it signed off, and collect up the bills, and then get into the accounting system. And there was a whole lot of very manual Excel spreadsheets coming out the other side for reporting. So the whole process took quite a while. Authorizations was universally a pain point across all the budget managers, of which there were many. And people always hated having to sign things, sign expenses, sign bills, get chased for it. It was sort of constant. So we did a full review of their whole sort of business process, including all the way from how do the bills come in, approval, accounting, and reporting. And the app stack that we landed on was Dext to increase the data entry and speed it up and reduce errors. ApprovalMax was perfect with the multiple budget managers. Everyone had their own budget. Now it all goes to the right person automatically. There was a bit of a process to ensure that who the budget manager of a particular bill was automated. There was the odd occasion where it was a case of, how do you know who approves this? And they say, oh, because the guy who gets the bills just knows. They'll look at the bill and they will have talked to him at the water cooler earlier that day, and so he knows that when that bill comes in, it's going to go to that person. And we said, well, okay, you can't automate the water cooler. We need to have a more structured process and as far as how it flows through, and we did that. And Xero accounting, which moved to the cloud, which was huge for them. And we also actually, which we don't have on it, added a reporting tool on the end to automate some of those Excel spreadsheets and things that took days to prepare, and now they are a click of a button to prepare. So it really, it got pushed along when we were forced to work from home. It was sort of, the project was there, we were almost started, but there wasn't a whole lot of urgency, and then work from home happened, and they went, as soon as we got back to the office, they caught us, right, we need to get this in, because that was tough. We were now emailing things around, and the stamp was stuck in the office, so it was no longer stamped. How do we do this? So that the urgency got there. We put it all in, and now it's much more efficient going forward.
That's brilliant. As you rightly mentioned, you can't automate the water cooler chat, right? So when you're forced to work from home, you couldn't actually put any system in place to automate any of that, and that's where the need for a system. I think I find it find it a bit strange until it, I want to excuse me, I don't want to say the wrong things here, but until it actually becomes a big problem. A lot of businesses don't see it as a move to a solution, which is a bit unfortunate. But there are solutions out there that are constantly educating, constantly providing the information to make the switch in an earlier, much earlier than it becoming a problem. But thanks for sharing your thoughts there and sharing the story there, Carl. Let's move on to another case study, and this is a case study of a large secondary school in New Zealand where BDO has again provided a solution and they've achieved massive results from it. So Daniel, keen to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it ties in with your point, really, whereas a lot of these sort of things can come across as a sort of a reactionary measure to try and fix a problem that you've discovered or sort of created by various forms. And in this school situation, a lot of those pain points were exactly the same. It was invoices arriving in from a supplier. David in the accounts room prints them out, stamps it. He goes upstairs and pigeonholes them based on who knows which, the science one that goes to this teacher, the English one, the ones for the balls go to the PE teachers, and those sort of things, that sort of knowledge that you sort of acquire and try and be able to formalize that. It was definitely a lot of work for the admin team to have to go through and print out all of these invoices every single month, and it's a lot of wasted paper, really. A lot of printer and paper and toner just going down, getting printed, signed, and shoved in a box, never to be seen again for a compliance reason. And it's a huge suck of time for the teachers. Teachers have a lot of things on their plate. At the best of times, the last thing they want to deal with is more paperwork. They certainly carry enough of that around most of the time as it is, with marking and homework and those sort of things. So we wanted to reduce the load on both the admin team and the teachers as the approvers at the other end. So the combination we set up in this case was Dext for the ingesting of the invoice and getting the information into Xero, ApprovalMax for the approval workflows, because again, in the school it was quite complicated. For example, the office manager, she was allowed to approve all of the invoices for stationery supplies, no matter what it cost. But the heads of departments for science, for example, were only allowed to approve up to $1,000 before it then needed the assistant or deputy principal's signature as well. And then if it was over 5, it needed the principal's on top of that before that could be paid. It was also frustrating with the suppliers, where they got into a situation of the invoice got sent through to the school, the piece of paper got lost somewhere in the ether, whether that was between the office or my pigeonhole or on my desk, something like that, and trying to deal with that, and then ringing up the office, say, why wasn't this invoice paid? I sent it to you a month ago. Oh, well, sorry, we lost it, or we didn't know about it, or it went to the wrong person. That person didn't know where to forward it, so it just got rejected or thrown out, which was definitely frustrating for their suppliers. And sometimes it was quite damaging to their relationships, where that supplier might not wish to work with that school again if it's going to take 6 months to get paid. Or again, as we sort of mentioned earlier, if someone was overseas or away on a trip and something couldn't be signed off, or again, in the school situation where that teacher was teaching that afternoon when the batch payment was being set up and couldn't sign off on something. And yeah, tying back again is invoices lost in pigeonholes. And I completely sympathize with that one, because I know what it was like to be given a stack of things to sign off on. And then even worse is I had to then try and work out which chartered account code to put it to based on that little slip of paper. It was quite interesting seeing this client had exactly the same situations that we experienced when I was working at the school. So we implemented ApprovalMax and Dext, etc., and it really made their lives an awful lot simpler, and the spotlight reporting on top of that to be able to produce timely information and board reports for heads of departments. And somebody has commented in the chat about another add-in that's quite useful for schools, which is called Monty, and that brings back memories. Because I remember that one was set up at the school I was working at, and one of the heads of departments says, there's a typo in your report, it's supposed to say monthly. But that was a really interesting app. I have to have another look at that and see what improvements I've made to it in the last few years.
Yeah, I can, just on that point, on the budget side, I mean, there's so many budget holders in schools, right? So as you were telling the story, I could actually picture and imagine how cumbersome this process is. And on the point of Monty, definitely look at it again. We are very big fans of Monty. We work with, as in, HubDoc or Dext and ApprovalMax and Monty and Xero. They work as a really good solution for schools, and I know there's hundreds of schools that are using that entire solution. So hats off to Monty and what they've done with the solution. It's
I suppose it ties back to what we said earlier too. There's no sort of perfect combination of apps that we can just say, here you go, set these 5 things up. It really depends on your situation, what you're trying to achieve, and that's a really useful one for schools.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is quite specific. So, it definitely works in their favor and how it ties in with the process. Really cool. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing that story. I genuinely could imagine how this process could be quite time consuming and how the solution would have worked. So with that, we'd like to move over to the next part of the session today, and we'll. Although it says demo, we won't go into a lot of detail around this anyway. So just wanted to talk about ApprovalMax. I mean, most people have already heard of Dext and HubDoc being the OCR solution that pull information out of a PDF report and digitize that invoice, which then gets pushed either into Xero or ApprovalMax for the next level of approval. So this is what an ApprovalMax user interface looks like. You'll have bills, or even sales invoices if that's a requirement, pulling from Xero into ApprovalMax. And I'll just pull one of the examples here. So this is an example of a bill, which is, we bought some subscriptions from Xero. That's a lot of subscriptions, by the way, for $57,000. But if this bill or if this invoice requires multiple people to sign off on the invoice before it is paid out, this is where we would essentially be looking at implementing a solution like ApprovalMax, which will essentially look at the bill, and based on some of the conditions you would have set up in the administrator panel within ApprovalMax, it will redirect this invoice to the relevant people or the approvers or the decision makers based on those conditions. So in this case, what I've got is a head of department step, a CFO step, and a CEO step. And behind each step is there are conditions. So in the head of department, I've got it based on region or tracking category. This invoice gets redirected, and then CFO is based on the amount. So if the amount of an invoice is over a certain value, it goes to the CFO for their approval. I think I've set it to $1,000. And it also goes to the CEO's approval if the amount of the invoice is over $10,000, for example. So basically, the system will look at those conditions and redirect this invoice to those decision makers. At the same time, we've also got a budget checking function. And going back to the example of not-for-profits and schools, all of them use some form of a budget. They are restricted because of the government funding that they receive. So being able to look at an invoice in real time, whether it's impacting the budget and how it's impacting the budget and how much it is impacting the budget by, makes it a very good solution, because you can actually look at the invoice and say whether you are still within the budget, or if you're not. I've got another example where I'm exceeding the budget. It shows a red cross. You can go into some of the details of the transaction as well, that if it's an annual budget, which month is this invoice impacting, and at an overall level, where is it impacting? And based on this, you can either push the bill out to the next month, or speak with the supplier that, hey, for this month we don't have budget, but for next month we'll pay it off. So all those decisions can easily be made. Like I said, the user interface is very simple. So based on these workflow, whoever gets the notification, they will receive an email in which there's a button to make a decision straight away. And there's also a mobile app which sends you push notifications. And I've talked about some of the benefits of the mobile app. 25% of the invoices get approved within the first 2 hours. So this is just a little bit of a very high level overview of what ApprovalMax is and how it works. Carl, Daniel, would you like to add to any of these features? Which one's your favorite feature? Where you see the maximum benefit?
I particularly like that little one further down where you can see which stage in a multi-step approval workflow an invoice is sitting at, especially if you're the person setting up the payments, for example. You can immediately see who you need to go and chase up for that approval. And there is a report available on ApprovalMax that will show you that. And that's a great time saver compared to that manual of chasing around which one of you 3 people that would be approving this has currently got, and trying to ask everyone. Just wastes everybody's time, and just be able to eliminate that completely is fantastic.
Awesome, thank you, Carl. Any which one's your favorite feature? What do you think?
Yeah, one of the things I really like is, haven't touched on it here, but is ApprovalMax has what it calls its fraud detection functions. What it means is that if a bill gets approved and then someone makes a change in Xero after the approval, they think they can get around it. ApprovalMax picks up on that, and it will email the administrator, say, hey, this bill's been edited after approval, or if someone tries to sneak a bill into Xero without it going through ApprovalMax at all, again, ApprovalMax will pick up on that, send the administrator, hey, someone's tried to, this has gone through without the proper approvals, and we can set notifications for that sort of stuff. So that's a really handy feature that really closes the loop of the audit trail when people think they can get around it, and that makes it a really strong approval process, which is great.
That's the big brother approach, right? The big brother's watching. So if any changes get made, they get picked up. I did forget to mention there is the audit report which gets pulled, which gets created after each transaction is fully approved, and this audit report gets sent into Xero as an attachment as well. So if there are any changes made after the effect, it obviously, because it's a PDF, it's not going to update. So at that point, the administrator gets notified, and obviously the audit report will get impacted. So you've got a decision to make at that point. Cool. All right, just conscious of time now. Basically, that's all there is in terms of the demo. I wouldn't go too much into detail. If you've got any questions, please reach out to us. Go to the website. There's lots of ways to connect with us. And with that, we will highlight this offer that I talked about at the beginning. So if you are looking at bringing any of your clients, or if you are a not-for-profit organization, we are offering a 50% discount on the subscription for the first 3 months if you sign up in the month of December. And this is on top of an ongoing 20% discount on subscription, which we offer to all not-for-profits across the board. That's our way of contributing to the not-for-profit space. So 20% you get forever, and 50% is for 3 months if you sign up within the month of December. To access this, there's a link here to the landing page, which will be sent out as part of the follow-up emails as well. And with that, let's dig into some of the questions. We have been answering some of the questions that have come through. Let's just go through the chat ones. But presuming that this process works as well with QBO, QuickBooks Online, yes, absolutely, Sharon, it does. We do have a direct integration with QuickBooks Online as well. If you've got a client using that software, the process is slightly different, but it's got a direct integration. So the invoice gets approved in ApprovalMax and it goes into QBO as a fully approved invoice with the audit report that I just showed you before. There's another question, could we use ApprovalMax for credit card requisitions and approvals? Yes, in some way. There is a slightly different process, I suppose, with credit card transactions. Most people code it to spend money transactions in Xero. However, if you wanted to get approvals on credit card transactions, they will be pushed as accounts payable bills, which will then be matched to the bank statement line coming through. So we've got a specific article on how it can be managed. Do BDO use ApprovalMax in their practice?
I'll take that one. That's an interesting one. I mean, we definitely recommend it for many clients. And when we came back to when is it the suitable solution? I mean, I can't speak for all of the BDO offices. I can speak for my office, and that we're an office of 200 plus staff, and Xero is a small business accounting system, so we need to use larger accounting systems, so we can't use ApprovalMax internally ourselves. Potentially could be used in some of the other BDO offices around the country, possibly. I could see that, but I can't speak for them, unfortunately.
I can probably contribute a little bit to that because the answer is actually one of the offices uses it very extensively. So we actually have a specific feature called standalone workflow. So what we have touched on today is just workflows for managing accounts payable, budgets, vendor approval, but there's actually a standalone solution we provide which doesn't integrate with Xero. And there is an office, BD office that uses ApprovalMax very extensively for the standalone workflows. And in fact, they have taught us so much as well, and how you end up using the standalone workflows in some specific ways. So yes, and as Carl's rightly pointed out, it depends on, obviously our integration is with Xero and QuickBooks Online. They're small, medium business accounting software. So the direct integration impacts only those software systems. And by and large, I wouldn't think a large accounting practice like BDO would use Xero for their practice. Cool, I've got another question here. Delegated approval policies often require at least 2 people to sign each expense invoice. However, an ApprovalMax admin user can change the approval workflow without a second approver. Therefore, there is a potentially higher likelihood here for an admin user to circumvent a delegated approval policy by mistake or fraud when updating an approval workflow. What is your process to manage this risk? This is a very detailed question, Paul. We'll probably have to come back to you on this, but I think just off the top of my head, I think the main thing will be removing the admin access for the user and putting them through as a normal user who can make a decision on either approving or rejecting the invoice.
I think just to add to that, I mean, that's probably coming back to a IT general controls question. The whole idea of don't give users more access levels than they should have. So a standard user should not be an administrator, because it would be, it's not good general business controls to allow people to be editing approval workflows. You should be very careful on who can edit approval workflows. So, that's a IT probably question rather than a ApprovalMax question so much.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Carl said there. A way that we sort of mitigate that in our instances that we've set up for clients is we will generally be the administrator of those workflows, and we will process the changes that have been sent through us by the authorized person, or we will often have maybe one staff member who is authorized on site to make those approval workflows. And if they did make a change and there are things in the workflow process, the workflows will start again and it will be tagged on that somebody made a change and it got restarted. So there would be a trail that's shown there that something has happened.
Interesting thoughts, and I think there's also the ability to set an auditor user role, which is essentially a read-only access. So if someone needs to have that level of oversight on all invoices in ApprovalMax, then you can just set them up with the auditor role, so they can't make any changes to the workflows, but they can still see where the bottlenecks are and what those workflows are. Cool. Any other questions? I don't see any other questions popping up. Yeah, that's good.
It's good to see some of the questions come through sound like they're from ApprovalMax users. Obviously, when you get a detailed question like that, that's clearly an ApprovalMax user. So good to see some current users on the webinar.
Yeah, certainly it stumped me for sure. Okay, well, if there are no questions, then I would like to thank you everyone for joining in and listening to us today. We've shared lots of really good stories, and we've also shared how BDO utilizes the app stack for not-for-profit organizations. I did speak to Carl and Daniel earlier on. If there are any specific questions you'd like to reach out to them about, they are more than happy for you to connect with them, and we will share the details in the follow-ups that come through. But with that, thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you, Carl and Daniel, again for joining us and sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.